This is Dr. Malik Raheem, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about some of the different models in racial identity development. Okay, so um, the thing is that across black racial identity model named the Nigrescence was the first model introduced, and it was introduced back in 1971. And it's probably the most well known of all the models. And it's been revised several times over the last, let's say, past 35 years. And the latest model is divides. First, it had the original model had pre-encounter, encounter, immersion, internalization. Then they included another stage or status called internalization commitment. Well, the latest model has broken down the pre-encounter stage into three different levels. So when you get to the pre-encounter stage, now you have three levels. One of the levels is called assimilation. The other one is miseducation, and the third one is self-hatred. And then you have the encounter stage, and the encounter stage is when an incident happens. Okay, so let me go over the actual stages in the new Nigrescence model. Okay, you have the pre-encounter stage, and the pre-encounter stage, as I said earlier, has assimilation, miseducation, and self-hatred. The the immersion stage is broken down into two levels: anti-white and intense black. And the internalization stage is broken down into three levels: nationalists, biculturalists, and multiculturalists. Um, the latest model is composed of um, 8 stages, and I will go over those 8 stages: pre-encounter assimilation, pre-encounter miseducation, pre-encounter racial self-hatred, immersion, anti-white immersion, intense black involvement, internalization nationalist, internalization biculturalist, and internalization multiculturalist. Okay, so individuals in the pre-encounter assimilation stage, um, they identify themselves from an individualistic perspective as an American. Okay. Individuals identify with the dominant cultural group and have no real desire to be aware of their blackness or be associated with being black or African American. Okay. Then you have the individuals in the pre encounter miseducation stage. In the pre encounter miseducation stage, they accept their governmental stereotype and distance themselves from their black community. Okay, so they'll accept the fact that black individuals are thugs, criminals. Black females are whorish and loud and angry. So what they'll try to do is they'll try to disassociate themselves as much as they can from being part of that community. Okay. Um, Individuals in the pre-encounter racial self-hatred stage have a negative image of being black due to their internalized oppression of racism and racial stereotypes. Okay. Then, like I said, you have the encounter stage where something will happen to where they'll realize they're black. Okay. Maybe it's getting pulled over by the police and they see that there's no other reason that they're pulled over by the police except that they're black. They might get turned down for a position or be called a name or anything like that. So that's the encounter stage. Then you go on to the immersion stage. And individuals in the immersion anti-white stage, they demonstrate emotional intensity about their black culture as well as white culture being rejected and white people, society, and culture, and accepting anything that's black is good and denouncing all things that are associated with white culture or the dominant culture as being bad. And individuals in the immersion and Black involvement stage are actively engaged in Black involvement, and they they disassociate it and they look at things from a dichotomous thinking style where they idealize and romanticize about being Black, um, and they do everything in and they associate it and do everything in the Black culture, and all their affiliations is Black involvement. Okay, individuals then in the internalization nationalist stage has an Afrocentric worldview and are actively engaged in Black culture, but the degree shown by these individuals in this stage, unlike the previous stage, immersion, is that they're more active, they're more doing things, um, and more affiliated with things. Individuals in the internalization bicultural stage show a balance between their Black culture and the dominant culture. They are grounded in both Black culture and um, the dominant culture. And then finally, individuals in the internalization multiculturalist stage identify with people identities equally and are comfortable having multiple identities. They have an intersectionality where they understand that they are more than just actually being Black. Okay, so that kind of covers the cross theory on um, racial development. Okay, now let's look at um, Helms theory. Helms theory of people of color and racial identity model is distinctive characteristics of Helms theory that were created like in 1995, and it's a theory that is a healthy racial identity, and it depends on overcoming internalized racism and racial biases and stereotypes. Dr. Helms prefers the term people of color instead of minority, since people of color are not always the numerical minority. Is why she feels that that's more of an accurate term. And whites are not always the numerical majority, even though whites exercise power regardless of their numerical status. Okay, so Dr. Helms, way she feels is that um, it's an integrational model. Um, it's an integrational model that she kind of took a little bit off of Atkinson, Morton, and Sue, a little bit from cross original theory, a little bit of Erickson's Eight Stages of Man. And so Helm's model is composed of six key stages, and they are conformity, dissonance, immersion, immersion, internalization, and integrated awareness. Individuals in the conformity stage manifest their internalized racism by assimilating um, to the dominant cultural values or by conforming to the dominant cultural stereotypes of their group. Also, individuals in the dissonance stage experience anxiety and ambivalence over their belongingness, since they are aware that they do not fit in with the dominant culture, yet lack knowledge about their own racial group. When you go to the immersion stage, people in the inversion stage, individuals in the immersion stage, operate from a dichotomous and hierarchical perspective. They they identify their group and reject the dominant cultural values. Individuals in the immersion stage show strong commitment to the in group, and their identity is centered on the in group values and beliefs. Okay, so when you move on to the next stage, internalization, what you have had is when individuals in the internalization stage have internalized their racial identity and function as bicultural individuals, to where they can be comfortable in the dominant culture, or they could be comfortable in their culture and their identity. Individuals in an integrated awareness stage display multicultural competency by showing commitment to their own in group while understanding and respecting other racial and ethnic groups and needs to maintain their own identity. They are the ones who uh, usually look at things in a holistic perspective, and so like that's what you get when you're looking at Helms' racial identity model. Okay, unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of models that we're going to go through, and the best thing I could tell you is that when you're looking at all these racial identity models, you got to take into consideration also an ethnic developmental model, and that's when you look at Feeney and Feeney's model of ethnic development. And it's very important for counselors because a lot of times you will see someone that is maybe like of African descent, or you would think that they all have the same worldview and all the same perspective. But depending on where they are on one of these stages and which model you look at as the one you're going to use as the litmus test, then the thing is that depending on where they are can dictate to where your client potentially is. So when you have um, the understanding that people who identify as African descent are not monolithic. Okay, they all don't have the same exact worldview and the same viewpoint, so it kind of depends on where they are as far as on these the stage on this models on which model you choose. But if you have noticed that the models have similarities, so when you go to Finney's model of ethnic development, and Finney's model is unique to since where it doesn't necessarily look at race, even though in some of the research, some people try to use race and ethnicity as interchangeable, but they're not. Okay. Um, well, what Marcia was he looks at is identifying diffusion and foreclosure together as the first stage. Um, Feeney looked at Marcia's uh, model and kind of fused the concept of identity diffusion and foreclosure into the first stage, where acceptance of the dominant cultural values leads to an internalized negative ethnic stereotype about adolescents and their own group. So what she says is that the first stage, just like in the other two stages that I mentioned, the first stage, the dominant group is the what's looked at as being, you know, the norm, while the person's own group is looked at being inferior, and they internalize the negative stereotypes. Um, Adolescents do not express the dominant group preference over a long time. And then the second stage is the moratorium, where adolescents are beginning to be aware of their ethnicity. And they show emotional intensity ranging from anger toward the dominant culture, guilt, shame, and also it's directed inward to themselves. Okay. And this could be a very troubling time for adolescents as they're growing in their ethnic awareness. The third stage is identity achievement, where adolescents have achieved what you will call a healthy bicultural identity by accepting their racial and ethnic identity while integrating some parts of the dominant cultural values. Right. So um, that is what's looked at when you look at um, Feeney's model of ethnic development. Okay, so um, Right now, I'm going to discuss ethnic development for Chicanos and Latinos. And Ruiz in 1990 created a model which constructed through case study analysis Mexican Americans and other Latinos. And this model is composed of um, five basic stages: the casual, cognitive, consequences, working through, and success. Okay, so individuals in the casual stage show little awareness of their actual racial and ethnic culture. Um, in the cognitive stage, individuals are eager to assimilate with the dominant culture because they associate success, and that's one of the reasons the assimilation is for the economic success in their life. Um, Individuals in the consequence stage reject their own culture in the process of assimilation. Okay. When it comes to the working through stage, individuals start to develop ethnicity, specific consciousness as they become intolerant of assimilation to the dominant culture. They struggle with their inner conflict between assimilation and the desire to reclaim their own racial and ethnic identity. And when you come to the successful resolution stage, individuals have increased self-esteem as a result of identifying their racial and ethnic heritage. Okay, um, yeah, that's what. So um, that's where I'm gonna kind of stop right now, not give you too much to digest, but just kind of watch these videos and then leave any questions you might have. You're in the comment, and you all have a great day.